Whether you are an employee or an employer, we've got a good one for you today. We're talking health and safety for professionals on the worksite and at home. Joining me for this conversation is Paul Krewson, who is the founder and CEO of Peak Ergonomics. He's a passionate guy and has several certifications in this area, including ergonomics and early intervention specialist. He's an occupational therapist, and he's also an advanced certified ergonomics assessment specialist. Paul has a Bachelor of Science degree in occupational therapy from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. Since that time, he has dedicated his practice to the field of ergonomics and early intervention. He founded Peak Ergonomics in 2006 and has created numerous successful ergonomics and early intervention programs across the U.S. Paul has also served as a volunteer for the American Society of Safety Professionals for the past 2 decades and is currently the president of the Mid-Missouri section. I met Paul personally around 2008 through a previous employer of mine and trust that he truly cares about both the employee's health as much as he cares about the employer's financial well-being regarding this area, which is rare. We recently met for coffee and collaborated, and it reminded me how much people need to know some of what's in his brain, so I invited him on the pod. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Kerri. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad you're here. So let's go ahead and jump right in and give the listeners what they're here for. So what was the inspiration behind starting Peak? Give me some of the background and overview of what Peak Ergonomics does.
Physical therapy and occupational therapy clinic, and we did 100% work comp claims. We managed work injuries. And so I spent 4 years doing that. That's when I started to get introduced to ergonomics. I would do ergonomic assessments, but it also showed me a great opportunity that I think people are missing. And best way is just to give an example. I treated a lot of tennis elbow in the clinic. Typically, when I would sit down with a new patient and say, "So tell me, how long has your elbow been hurting?" They would say something like 6 months. And I'd be like, 6 months? Well, why did it take you so long to come see me? They said, well, when it first happened, it was just a twinge. And I didn't think anything about it. Just come and go. It got more and more frequent, but it was still very little pain. The pain started to increase, and I just toughed it out for as long as I could. But then finally it got to a spot where I had to do something about this. So I went to the HR manager and I told them, I can't tough this out anymore. I'm in too much pain. We got to do something about this. And let me tell you, as an HR manager, that's not going to be a good day when someone is saying, I've toughed this out for as long as I can and we got to do something about this. That means they're at the very minimum in the moderate stage of a musculoskeletal disorder, sometimes in the severe stage. And they would wind up seeing me. If they were lucky, they saw me before they saw the surgeon. However, a lot of times they would see the surgeon first and they would come to me after surgery to be rehabbed. But I can get these people better, and I would get them better. The only element is time. I would tell my patients, as long as this problem's been going on, once we take corrective action and do things that are going to allow your body to heal, it takes about that long for your body to recover and you to get over this. And that's when my patient would usually say to me, well, Paul, I wish I would have seen you 6 months ago. And I would say, yeah, me too. And I became frustrated because I saw hundreds, I'm not joking, hundreds of those cases. And I realized that I'm not happy sitting on a stool, rolling around a clinic, waiting for people that can't tough it out any longer and that are so bad they have to do something about it. So that's when I started going to factories. I started talking to HR professionals, safety professionals, business owners, and telling them, hey, I can stop these. You don't have to have musculoskeletal disorders anymore, because let me talk to them when they first feel that twinge, when they first have that ache or that soreness, before they think it's a big deal, before they want to see a doctor. That's when I need to see them, and we can be successful. And we've been doing this. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, and we've had numerous clients. We currently have a team of 11 people, and we've had over 22,000 early intervention cases. and our success rate is 96%. Soon after I started doing this, I had a woman, she was doing a sewing operation. And she said, my left long finger has gone numb. And I said, okay, when did this start? And she said 7 a.m. And I looked at my watch and it was 8:30 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, this is perfect, right? This is what I want. I went from 6 months to an hour and a half. And and that's what I want because honestly, Kerri, it's so simple. When you see people that are just in the precursor stages of a musculoskeletal disorder, if you identify them and take corrective action, and we can talk about there's different ways to deal with this, but it's so easy and everybody's a winner. Our latest logo is keep workers working because there's such a labor shortage now.
Yeah.
Companies are struggling to hire good employees. They're struggling to keep good employees. And we can, we do that. We keep your workers working. So there's my sales pitch.
No, I love that. And I think the stories are helpful because a lot of times my clients or where I've worked previously, it's like, what could a company like you really do for us? And the ambiguity causes a lot of inaction. And so I think the stories help an employer to put themselves in the shoes of the story and say like, oh, okay, this is what someone can do for us. But I also think there's some apprehension, in my world in HR, you mentioned HR managers, between the Me Too movement and all kinds of different things, when you roll out something new, a lot of times you see an uptick in claims. And so what do you say to an employer when they say, won't offering early intervention to everyone increase the number of personal claims becoming workers' comp claims?
That's a great question, Kerri, and I get it. People are scared of two things. They're scared that we're going to increase the work comp claims. They're scared we're going to increase their OSHA recordables. But interestingly enough, this is what OSHA wants you to do. It's specified in part of medical management is they want you to do early intervention. But that's a great question and kind of to build off of that, some companies will say, okay, well, we'll have you come and do early intervention, but we just want you to do the work related only. We don't want you doing personal because we don't want things to get confused around here. But I tell them you do not want to do that. You want to open this program to all people. If someone is at work and they're not comfortable, regardless of the cause, let us see them because it actually works to your advantage because generally people are honest with healthcare professionals because they want to know what's going on and they want to be treated correctly. If you have an early intervention program in place, and let's say someone injured their ankle on Sunday afternoon playing softball, if they know they've got this program in place, they can come into work Monday morning and tell their employer, hey, I sprained my ankle playing softball. Can I see? And they're like, yeah. So we see a lot of people that get injured over the weekend, get injured during the evenings. And whereas if you don't have this program in place, then you're actually going to increase your likelihood of someone coming into work and alleging that they got hurt at work. Now that's kind of a black and white issue. But then with ergonomics, it's more gray. It's like a lot of people don't know why their neck hurts or why their shoulder hurts. So like, I don't know, maybe I slept on it wrong. I could be the job. I have no idea. So, you get a lot of these nebulous, vague, and a lot of times I may not be able to figure out people they're so holistic and I don't think it does anyone a service to try to dissect them. Okay, well, this is your work life and this is your personal life. But we see the whole person and we try to identify everything. But you do have a good point. Your question is this has to be done right because in a sense you are opening the floodgates, and so you need to have the right consultant, the right professional in place because you're going to need someone that's going to be able to see all these people and respond appropriately. And also that's something we do, if there's something that, maybe it's not an appropriate work comp claim, we keep our own private notes. So let's say someone did allege this was work related. Well, we can help defend against a work comp claim, but that's where the 96% of people get better. So our main focus is you put us there, let us see everybody. We get people better. It's a win-win.
Yeah, while you were talking about kind of that difference, you're passionate about them opening it up to the personal side. So talk to us about, if I'm an employer and I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, who pays for that? If my employee was injured on at a Sunday night softball game and they came in on Monday, how does that play into the employer's cost?
That's a great question. So we are paid by the employer. We charge a flat hourly rate. And so generally we're usually on site. Some places we're on site 1 day a week. Other places we're on site 5 days a week. But the employer pays for our services. And so we function under the umbrella of prevention and wellness. Most of what we are doing is preventing and doing wellness. Now we do first aid. So like that example, someone spraining their ankle playing softball, we would handle them under basic first aid and first aid guidelines. But that's a great benefit because the employee, they don't pay anything. The healthcare system, Kerri, oh my gosh. Let me just tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
And this really illustrates something. So there's one of my clients, I'm there 1 day a week. Then January, this employee at home slipped on the ice, injured her shoulder. I saw her. It was clear she has a complete rotator cuff tear. I just told her, I said, you've got to go see a personal doctor. This is tortors. I mean, it was completely obvious. That was in January. It took her like 6 weeks to get into this clinic. And so the doctor saw this patient and wanted to order an MRI. But then the insurance would not approve the MRI. The insurance said, you have to go through physical therapy first before we approve the MRI. And so it took her 8 weeks to get in to see a physical therapist. And so she went through 2 months of physical therapy. She finally got an MRI just about a month ago. MRI showed exactly what I knew. The two muscles of the rotator cuff were completely torn in half, complete rupture. Her biceps tendon is pulled off the bone. And so now she's waiting to see an orthopedic surgeon. And we're in July now. And so half a year has gone by, and this woman's been dealing with a non-functional shoulder. And so at the very least, I've been helping her. I actually got her a set of pulleys so she doesn't get a frozen shoulder, and which is, it will be a secondary problem. But, I'm helping her. I give her, different hot packs and cold packs and tell her how to use that, how to use pulleys to keep her range of motion. You give her biofreeze and show her other exercises that are safe to do. But that example just shows you how frustrating our healthcare system is. And so, honestly, the best thing you can do for your employees is just to get them well any way possible, as soon as possible. If you can, and that's part of, and I'm really trying to guard my speech because I'm trying not to come across as negative, but I mean, if we can keep people out of the healthcare system, because our healthcare system is just so frustrating. And that's the thing. We get people better and they don't have to get into the healthcare system. I mean, obviously, if it's a severe injury, they still have to go, but we can be that component, especially right now with wait times so long. We actually had a very large employer hire us recently, and they're not actually having any ergonomic recordables, but it's so hard. The healthcare system is just so difficult to navigate now. They just want us to come in and see people regardless, just so that people are comfortable at work and they're strong and healthy.
Yeah, I think that's a great benefit. And a couple of things that you said I wanted to reiterate. And one is, our healthcare system is broken and our insurance system is a large issue of that. And since, my background is being a COO as an insurance brokerage, and then I worked on the M&A side in insurance, I've just seen the behind the scenes on that. And I couldn't agree more. It's a mess. And it's going to take a really long time to untangle it. It's not something that's going to get cleaned up in the US for a long time, even though I do think there's more awareness to it now than ever. It's going to be a long time. And so benefits like your organization are huge. I see other direct primary care contracts that are popping up. And so employers are recognizing that this is something that they can offer as a benefit, but really it's to keep happy, healthy, engaged employees. Really, the benefit is to the employer to keep that productivity up. And so I love what you're doing. I definitely see a need there. Let's talk a little bit more. You talked about the need for physical therapy in this last case. So what is the difference between early intervention and on-site physical therapy program with Peak?
That's a great question. And that's something we make very clear is we are not an on-site physical therapy clinic. We're not in the healthcare system, not creating medical records. We're not communicating with insurances, taking doctors' orders. We operate under the umbrella of prevention and wellness. Most of what we do is under prevention. It's like the tennis elbow where people are getting aches, soreness. And a lot of times, even though there's an instant injury, like snap, you tore your rotator cuff, many times people feel something leading up to that. And I've seen this a lot where, 3 or 4 weeks before someone has like a substantial injury, they start feeling off. They start feeling like some fatigue and discomfort. So the goal is to get people talking about fatigue and soreness. And that it takes a lot of education. You have to constantly educate the employees, the hourly workers. Even more, and just as important, you have to make sure that the lead workers and the supervisors are helping this. Because, a lot of times the lead worker, the supervisor, they'll see the employee shaking their hand or rubbing their elbow. So everyone needs to be educated. It's just a constant, we do new hire training and orientation because the new hires need to understand this. But we really need to make sure everyone is educated on that so that they understand this is prevention. Now, most of what we do is prevention. However, sometimes if, let's say, someone does have a sprain or a strain, if it's substantial, we are there to triage the injury and then set them up with a physician, and then we can help manage the care and make sure they're going to, someone needs physical therapy, they go to a physical therapy clinic, and we'll make sure that that's going well. But for the most parts, most minor sprains and strains could be managed with first aid. And so that's where we do basic first aid, which is, hot and cold packs, massage, non-rigid supports, over-the-counter medicine. So that's how I explain that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I hear clients in distribution environments or logistics environments, they talk about ergonomics and workplace safety more often. But what about office environments? How are you kind of breaking in and educating those more professional environments that maybe aren't thinking about workplace injuries, and what is it that they need?
That's a great question, and that gets ignored a lot. I remember when I started doing office ergonomics in the year 2000, you know what the biggest barrier was to a proper computer setup? It was the monitor. Do you remember cath ray tubes? They were like, this deep. They were just these giant dinosaurs that didn't fit on anybody's desk.
Yeah.
And they just usually stuck them in a corner because they took up so much space, and then they wound up, turning their neck to work on their monitor. So probably the best technology breakthrough came with flat screen monitors. And I remember when they first came out, they were like $600, $500. And we're talking like for a 17-inch monitor. And this was before widescreens were there. But it was such an advantage, but it was such a big ask because actually that was a little bit more than a great chair back then. One of the best chairs in history has been the Steelcase Leap, which came out in 2003. And that was like $450. The great thing about technology is it eventually gets cheaper and better. So, being able to have these nice flat screen monitors, and then the evolution on flat screen monitors then came with monitor arms, as we're starting to be able to, put a monitor on an arm, and then you can position it anywhere in space, especially if you got 2 monitors or 3 monitors. So monitor arms have been a very nice development. What's interesting is I saw this one employee. This is at a heavy steel manufacturer, but they've got about 200 office workers there too. And he started getting neck pain. And I'm like, well, so how long has this been going on? He goes, I don't know, 6 weeks. And which again, it's like, hey, I'm here every day. So you have to constantly beat it into people. Tell me when this first starts. And don't wait. But so we finally, after we had to talk for about 15 minutes to figure out what happened. But what happened was IT came and dropped a second monitor and just set it on his left-hand side. So he had his primary monitor here, his secondary monitor here, and he's right eye dominant. And so he's now having to turn to look at this monitor over here. And so we just took that monitor that was dropped on the left, we put it on the right and angled it correctly, because primary monitor should be straight on, and then the secondary monitor should be angled just correctly on the dominant eye side. And just doing that right there, putting that monitor from the left to the right, solved his issue, and it took away his neck pain. And I did show him some stretches, and we talked about using moist heat, massage cane, and all that stuff. But so, with that's kind of where the technology is with monitors right now. They're all flat screen and they're monitor arms. Now, other technologies, there's been all sorts of development with keyboard and mouse platforms trying to get them on the same level and to get them at the appropriate height. But now those are almost antiquated because of the development with sit to stand workstations. So if you can get a good sit to stand workstation, and ideally, it's great to have the whole countertop go up and down. The pricing has come down a lot. That you can get like a nice surface, probably like a 4 foot wide by about 3 foot deep, probably for somewhere around $600, $700. But in that way, you can keep, your keyboard and mouse together and your monitor, and then the whole countertop goes up and down. For those that can't afford that, there are, like, for about $200, they've got just the ones that just have it's like a tray like that wide, and you can have your monitor up top and then your keyboard and mouse, and that goes up and down. But I see being able to do sit stand workstation. That's probably the most important thing. Having a good chair it's fully adjustable. You've got to be able to understand how your chair works and make sure you're getting all the body parts supported, and then to be able to stand. You need to. It's funny because you go into the office and all these office workers are saying, "I want to stand," and then you go on the factory floor and all these factory workers saying, "I want to sit."
Yes.
Well, so which is it? Do you want to stand or do you want to sit? But the answer is, our body is designed to move. And so you want to sit, you want to stand, you want to walk. But it's hard because we tend to, focus in on our work. It's like, I need to get this done. I got to focus. And so we lock our mind in, but at the same time, we lock our body. And that's not healthy. I mean, but a lot of people do it. I mean, they'll like lock their mind in and they'll stay in that position for 3 or 4 hours, just trying to, you know.
Yes, guilty. Totally. I see that very often. And, if I'm an employer and I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking if you've got a big IT staff, or if you've got one IT person or your HR person, whoever is setting up workstations for new hires, they need to be trained in ergonomics. Like that would be a great training to have Pete come in and do for your IT team, or to have Pete come in and regularly assess. So this is important stuff, and usually just stuff that gets ignored, honestly, because people, they just want to get their work done. They just want their employees to get their work done, but this is how they can get it done better. So what about the shift toward more remote and hybrid work, and that influencing the design and importance of ergonomic home office setups? What do we do to influence that?
Yeah. And for our business, I mean, that's all about the pandemic. It's pandemic happened and I got a PhD. There was an employee, he was a PhD for this institution. Everyone got sent home to work at home. He put his laptop on the kitchen table. PhD. But you know what? Although he had a PhD, he had zero education in ergonomics. And so he sets his laptop on the kitchen table 6 months later, guess what? He's got carpal tunnel syndrome.
Yep.
And so that just illustrates, you know, and I think that's what the whole pandemic has illustrated to us is regardless of where your office is, it needs to be set up ergonomically correct. It needs to be safe. And there's a lot you could look at, not just ergonomics, but safety. As far as if you have employees working at home, you got to look at fall hazards, slip hazards, electrical hazards. But as far as what we do, ergonomics. And so, yeah, we did do quite a bit of that. It does seem like most people are back in the office or they've got some sort of hybrid. But the key component is, hey, just because you're working at home, that doesn't mean it should be less safe or less ergonomic. Sometimes the issue comes into play with money, as far as maybe the employer isn't going to pay for all the home setup. But I think most people understand the benefit to their health and are willing to. I think sometimes there's a 50-50 split where the employer pays half. But yeah, that's the most important thing is wherever your office is, it needs to be ergonomically correct.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of that is just setting up the policy, like determining what it is that the company is going to pay for and what the expectations are, and then educating the employee on how to do that. Almost every client that I saw during that time period or colleague, you get on video with them and they're all at a different place, a lot of times at the kitchen table or whatever. And I get it. Not everybody has a home office. My business is a remote business. So my home office here is beautiful, but it hasn't always been this way. And so helping people to understand the importance of not just sitting on your kitchen chair and what that can do long term, even if it is just 2 days a week, because it's still, that could be 8 to 10 hours, 2 days a week. That's a lot of time to do some damage. So what do you perceive as the most impactful area of influence for your company, biggest area of impact that you make on clients?
I would say we are very specialized in helping the individual. All of our consultants are not just excellent therapists and ergonomists. Each one of us has a genuine desire to help everyone and form that personal relationship. When we meet with somebody, we are sincerely interested in helping them in every way. And it might be ergonomics and helping them get a proper ergonomic setup. It could also mean we talk to them about their sleeping posture, and maybe there's something that needs to be done to modify their sleeping posture so that when they rest, they can heal. Or maybe it's how they're caring for their child or their elderly parent, or maybe you're you're not going to believe how many people are working 8 to 10 hours in a factory, clocking out, and then going to a gas station and working 4 to 6 hours at a gas station. Mm-hmm. So, trying to look at this from a holistic perspective and, everything about a person that interacts with them. And every person's different. Some people, and that's what we're in tune is we try to identify the whole person and what does this person need, and we try to be what that person needs as far as how we can coach them and guide them. And so I would say that the personal one-on-one relationships with the employees to keep them healthy, make them healthy and well and strong, because healthy employees, I mean, that's critical. In order for it, really, it's hard to have a good employee if they're not healthy. Mm-hmm. And so that's our whole point, is to bring health and wellness individually. And we do group training and all that, but our focus has been one-on-one, early intervention, how to make your employees healthy and well and keep them that way.
So I love that, and I agree. I'm sure a lot of business owners are thinking, yes, I would like to do that, but there's money involved. So let's talk a little bit about money. What do you recommend to small and mid-sized business owners to keep costs down on workers' compensation claims?
That's a great question, because workers' compensation is so expensive. And man, if you just have one, it depends on how big you are, but you don't want to have work comp claims because, it's going to affect your modifier and it sticks with you forever. If you look at how long one claim affects your modifier.
Yeah.
So, you know, the best thing I can tell you is be proactive. And that brings up a very important concept. I really enjoyed your last podcast, which was on change management, right? People are afraid of change. It's stressful. You look at all the stresses in life, and it's basically change. And it's like, so if people don't like to change, then how are you going to have an effective prevention program, right? Because if you're saying, we need to change, so that's where early intervention is so critical, because you actually have someone that's starting to feel pain. And then once you have someone that starts to feel pain, then they become open. Like, oh, well, maybe I should use this ergonomic tool that I should have been using all along. Maybe I should do this stretch, or, modify how I sleep with the splint. And then everyone becomes more pliable, because then all of a sudden, the manager might become more pliable with the threat of a work comp claim or an OSHA recordable coming down. To answer your question, I think that everybody should be doing early intervention to some degree. If you're really small businesses, we can, just do it as an as needed basis. I prefer to be live because I think that's most effective, but we have done some virtual. It's just a lot harder, because my eyes and my hands and my ears are much better than this phone right here. So.
Yes, I agree. And I was thinking when you were talking through that, from an insurance perspective, when you mentioned modifiers, once that work comp claim hits, that is something that every year when the insurance carrier is looking at your premiums, they're looking to see how many claims you've got and your EMOD, your experience modification rate, and then they're determining if they're going to jack your prices up or not. And it's all based on risk. So I'm not trying to say that insurance carriers are being shady in this way, because they are managing risk as well. So when you've got claims, then they're saying this is a riskier coverage person for us to cover. And so then they're increasing your premiums. And there's a point where your insurance carrier can actually boot you. Now, if you've got an independent agent, doesn't matter as much. They can move you on to another carrier. But again, that modification rate, that claim rate is still going to follow you where you go. So this stuff matters. And when you can show as an employer, we have trained our employees, we have a company like Peak that comes on site, then it's going to be a less of a, I guess, ding toward you. The onus is going to fall elsewhere at times. And so it's just something to think of. I know it probably seems like you're just passing risk and money around. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing you say, Paul, is about how the employee feels, what their health is, and how they're operating as a person. And yes, there's all kinds of things that we can hack on the back end from an HR or a money perspective. But really, if we just care about our people and want them to take care of themselves, then this is all going to take care of itself through the end.
You wouldn't believe how expensive these claims are. It's astronomical. One average tennis elbow, $70,000. It's ridiculous. And that's kind of on the low end. You've got your medical, your TTD, and your PPD. Then on top of that, you've got your indirect. So you're going to have legal fees, possibly OSHA fines, turnover, morale, productivity.
Yeah.
For the bare minimum, your indirect's going to be 1.2 times direct. OSHA actually says they recommend you do a 3 to 7 time multiplier to calculate indirect. But if you honestly sit down and look at these expenses, I mean, they're astronomical. It's insane. And we can sit, and that's something that we do, cost justifications to our clients to show them, hey, we're saving you a lot of money. Honestly, all we got to do is prevent one claim, and we pretty much paid for our services for that year in most cases.
What I found about a lot of organizations like yours, or let's say outsource recruitment firms or whatever it is, a lot of individuals just do not make the call because they're afraid that they're going to get into some sales pitch and then get talked into something more expensive than they can afford. So let's just talk like a little roughly in numbers. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but I'm afraid that people are going to listen and say, we're not big enough. So what's the smallest size of client that you've ever worked with? When would you say, here's kind of a minimum threshold of when this makes sense for an organization?
Right. So for a very small client, we can come on site for 4 hours, 1 day a week. and that rate is $250 an hour. So for $1,000, you can get us there for half a day a week. Or even if you're really small, we come out every other week or whatever works. The more frequent we're there, the better, but it just depends on the size of the business. But I know it does get difficult, but most of our clients, they are self-insured. So they really see this. It's a no-brainer to where I think it might be harder for some smaller businesses that aren't self-insured. They don't quite understand these costs and they don't feel it right away. They might have this mindset, well, that's what work comp insurance is for, right? That budget, we're paying work comp insurance, so that money's over there. Whereas if you're able to see the big picture and see all the money.
Yeah, then it makes a lot more sense. And when you're saying small, give me a roundabout. How many employees is that?
I would say a small would be less than 100 employees.
Yeah.
It would be a small business in mind because we do have some small businesses. But definitely after 100 employees, I think it really becomes more of an easy sell.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that doesn't, like, same thing with HR services or anything else. When you've got 50 to 100 people, you've got quite a bit of people on your payroll there that you're responsible for. So it's still very important to look at services like this. It still can be a very large spend. So before we wrap up, how can folks connect with you and your company? And then also just anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners today.
Sure. Yeah. Our website, we've spent a lot on our website. It's peakergo.com. And there's a lot of research, I think 120 pages. And we've really worked very hard on the videos. There's a videos page that shows you proper lifting techniques and appropriate stretches and exercises. I recommend you go through our website because it's purposely free and filled with great information. What was your second question?
Anything else you want to share?
Oh, okay.
Anything at all?
I think that's good. I think we covered it. Our philosophy is we try to treat each other like everyone's family, that we're all brothers and sisters. And that's our philosophy. And we like to do business with people that have the same mindset.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love the free tools and resources that you're offering. Folks, if you're listening to this and you're one of those smaller businesses and you're like, gosh, I just don't know if we can really go down this path, take Paul up on his offer and use those free videos. If I were you, I would do a once a month lunch and learn where you've got folks that bring their lunch in and you have them watch a safety video or two together. That might sound lame, but we all know that right now the desire for learning and development is larger than ever. And so anytime that you can utilize free resources from a company that's well educated like Paul's, why not do that and get some mileage out of that? That's just one small idea. Put a link in your employee newsletter. Back to Peak. I think that's a great idea. We will link Peak Ergonomics website in our show notes. I highly recommend you go take a look at that. We'll also tag them on our social media platforms, and I'll also link you directly to Paul's LinkedIn page. You're welcome to reach out to me. I've got their contact information, and I'm always happy to do a warm introduction with any of the companies that I feature here on Don't Waste the Chaos. But we know that keeping up with the risks of workplace safety can feel like chaos. Insurance claims are even worse or harder to manage, but there's early intervention and companies like Paul's out there that can help with both. So don't waste the chaos, embrace it. Till next time.